going back to Dartmouth, what did you study?
Yeah, so I have a PhD in, oddly enough, immunology, where my base research was on viral immune responses. Never thought I was going to use that again. Thanks,
Yeah,
COVID.
he probably hasn't used
And
that much very much.
no, right? Yeah. So so interesting to see that part of my life come back into existence. So I studied my PhD in molecular and cellular biology. My real focus was on viral immunology, which is, so different from nutrition. But when I finished at Dartmouth, right around 2011, um, I took a postdoctoral fellowship at the National Institute of Health, looking at understanding gut biology as it relates to the immune system, as it relates to nutrient status and things like that, vitamin deficiencies. And, that was sort of the first place that really got me starting to think about, nutrition from a research point of view. And at the same time, I was looking at nutrition from a performance point of view for my own life. How can I utilize nutrition to make myself better within the sport of CrossFit? And so I applied all of the skills that I'd learned in my PhD and my postdoc about how to research these topics and kind of put it into this personal interest of mine. And what I quickly realized was that the nutritional field was just a disaster of bad studies and, really bad science. People recommending things that had tons of bias and flaws in them. And so the training that that I developed on, immunology, which has very little to do really with nutrition for performance, simply allowed me to look at those studies and say, this one's high quality, this one's garbage, and start to piece together like what is an optimal way to start to fuel for health, for aesthetics, and for performance. And around that time, within the CrossFit space, everybody was so focused on like the paleo diet, right? Which for those of you that are not super familiar with it, basically the one sentence description would be, eat as if your 10,000-year-old ancestors ate. So, no processed grains, no processed sugars, pretty much avoiding all of those types of foods. And so by nature, that tends to be a relatively lower carbohydrate diet. It's not necessarily the goal, but it ends up being that way for a lot of people. And I was following it. I was probably unintentionally doing, the ketogenic diet without even knowing it for a while, and really feeling like crap. And so I am eating one way, reading all of these studies, not on CrossFit, of course, in 2011, but on, high intensity training sports, rowing, Wingate tests and things like that, and seeing the evidence overwhelmingly point in the direction of carbohydrate-based fueling. Once you understand the science of anaerobic performance being exclusively fueled by carbs or glucose, the next logical step is to say, okay, I got to put more of these in my diet, And so I start doing that. I start beating people that I probably had no business beating at workouts and in competitions. And next thing you know, people are asking me, hey, what are you doing? Can you help me with my diet? Help me do what you're doing. And that was sort of the launching of performance-based nutrition coaching for me.
So to answer me this, how do you go from researching for your personal well-being and your personal performance to seeing an opportunity to be a full-time nutrition coach?
Oh yeah. To be clear, it was definitely a gradual thing. So I definitely kept working within the immunology space for a long period, and was really just working with a handful of kind of relatively local clients for a while. So here's the story really quickly. I was doing nutrition seminars for the general population at CrossFit gyms around New England, mostly New Hampshire, a couple down in Massachusetts. And one of my buddies was running a performance-based sort of weekend, like a training camp at CrossFit Free in Salem, owned by Brandon Peterson and another guy named Kevin O'Malley were running that seminar. And so Kevin's an old friend of mine. He said, hey, we need somebody to come talk about nutrition. Do you have any interest? And I said, sure, I'll come down. I'll talk for an hour. And, I show up saying, women should be eating more than 250 grams of carbs. The men should be over 400 grams. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. But at the end of it, this young woman walks up to me and she introduces herself and she says, hi, I'm Tasia Percevecz. It's nice to meet you. I would love to talk to you at some point about helping me with nutrition. You know, I'm an elite gymnast. I'm in the sport of CrossFit. I don't really know what I'm doing. You know, I have a gymnast mentality to eating. And I said, sure, like, let's get in touch. And it took a little while. Tasia would tell you it took her bombing out at regionals that year for her to reach out to me and say, hey, I need some help. And that was one major avenue. And, you know, Tasia's now like almost a household name within the CrossFit sport. She's won the games twice with Mayhem. You know, she's podiumed at pretty much every major event you can think of, and is just generally an awesome person. So that was one avenue. About 3-4 weeks later, I get a call to do another nutrition seminar down in Connecticut with Jason Leiden, who runs CrossFit Milford. Jason is one of the best coaches within the sport of CrossFit, and is really about as OG as it gets. So he was the one hosting all of those competitions that I competed in back in 2010. And so Jason put me in touch with some of his athletes from CrossFit Milford. He put me in touch with Danny Horan, Haley Adams. And so these two sort of trees of people helping me out started to grow like very organically, the athletes that I was working with. And so as Tasia started to see results, she introduced me to Mackenzie Riley, who introduced me to Carly Feuer, who introduced me to Nicole Holcomb. And so the story goes. On the other end, you know, Danny Horan and Haley introduced me to a whole slew of athletes from, you know, Vermont all the way down to New Hampshire, over to Dubai. And the thing just kind of like went from a side gig that was there to make me some extra spending money to an opportunity that I needed to take full advantage of. And so M2 was formed really, to be honest with you, out of necessity. I was asked to be the nutrition expert at Power Monkey Fitness Camp, which is this, you know, 1-week fitness festival down in Crossville, Tennessee, relatively near CrossFit Mayhem. And I didn't want to show up as just Mike. And so I said, all right, let's form the company. Let's get this whole thing started. And, you know, 4.5 years later, we got, I think, 15, 16 coaches, you know, closing in on 700 full-time members. And we're over about 50 CrossFit Games athletes, a couple of pro athletes from other sports, Olympians and stuff like that. So